I want you to imagine this. You swipe your card, tap your phone, or receive a salary alert, and money simply appears. No printing press, no gold coins, no trucks delivering cash, just numbers on a screen. Yet those numbers control rent, food, debt, freedom, stress, and power. So the real question is not how do I earn money, but where does money actually come from and who decides how much exists? Once you understand how money is created and regulated, finance stops feeling mysterious and starts feeling mechanical. You begin to see why inflation happens, why interest rates rise, why recessions hurt ordinary people first, and why governments and banks matter so much in your daily life. In this video, I'm going to walk you step by step from zero knowledge to deep understanding, using plain language, real examples, and practical connections to your income, investments, taxes, and long-term wealth. At its core, money is a tool, not wealth itself. Money exists to solve a problem humans faced for thousands of years. Barter was inefficient. If I had goats and needed grain, I had to find someone who wanted goats and had grain at the same time. Money became a universally accepted medium of exchange, a unit of account to measure value, and a store of value to save purchasing power over time. Those three functions are the foundation of all monetary systems. Without them, economies slow down or collapse. Importantly, money only works because people trust it. A dollar bill has no intrinsic value. It works because society agrees it does. That trust is why regulation exists. If anyone could create money freely, trust would collapse. Understanding money creation is really about understanding how societies protect that trust, while still allowing economies to grow. Historically, money did not start as paper or digital entries. Early forms included shells, beads, salt, livestock, and eventually precious metals like gold and silver. Metals worked well because they were scarce, durable, divisible, and widely desired. Over time, carrying heavy metals became impractical, so banks emerged to store gold and issue paper claims, what we now call banknotes. These notes were originally promises to redeem gold. Eventually, governments realized that tying money strictly to gold limited economic growth, especially during wars or crises. This led to fiat money, money backed not by gold, but by government authority and public trust. Today, almost every country uses fiat currency. This historical shift is critical because it explains why modern money can be created digitally and why regulation, not physical scarcity, is what keeps money stable. Now let's talk about who actually creates money today, because this is where most people get it wrong. Many assume governments print money directly, but in reality, money creation happens through a partnership between central banks, commercial banks, and government policy. Central banks, like the Federal Reserve in the U.S., do not create most money directly. Commercial banks do. When you take out a loan, the bank does not hand you existing money from someone else's deposit. It creates new money by crediting your account. That loan simultaneously becomes an asset for the bank and a deposit for you. This is called credit-based money creation, and it accounts for the majority of money in modern economies. Physical cash is only a small fraction of total money supply. To make this concrete, imagine you take a $10,000 loan to buy a car. The bank does not move $10,000 from a vault. Instead, it creates a new deposit in your account. That deposit is spendable money, even though it did not exist before. This process is regulated through reserve requirements, capital requirements, and interest rates. Banks cannot create unlimited money because they must manage risk, meet regulatory standards, and ensure borrowers can repay. This is why money creation is closely tied to debt. Almost all money in circulation exists because someone, somewhere, owes money. That sounds alarming, but it's also what allows economies to grow. Growth requires investment, and investment usually requires borrowing. This brings us to central banks, the institutions responsible for regulating money creation. Central banks do not usually lend directly to consumers. Instead, they influence the system through tools like interest rates, open market operations, and reserve policies. The most powerful tool is the policy interest rate, the rate at which banks can borrow from the central bank or from each other overnight. When rates are low, borrowing becomes cheaper, encouraging banks to lend and people to spend. When rates rise, borrowing slows, reducing money creation. Central banks also buy and sell government bonds to inject or remove money from the system. These actions influence inflation, employment, and economic stability. Their core mandate is usually price stability and maximum sustainable employment. Inflation is one of the most misunderstood outcomes of money creation. Inflation is not simply prices going up, it is the loss of purchasing power of money. When too much money chases too few goods and services, prices rise. Moderate inflation is considered healthy because it encourages spending and investment rather than hoarding cash. Hyperinflation, however, destroys trust in money and collapses economies. Regulation exists to balance growth and stability. Central banks constantly monitor inflation indicators, wage growth, and productivity. When inflation runs too hot, they tighten policy. When economies stall, they loosen it. Understanding inflation helps you understand why your savings may lose value over time and why investing is often necessary for long-term wealth preservation. Another key concept is money supply, which comes in different measures. Economists use terms like M0, M1, and M2 to describe how much money exists and how liquid it is. M0 includes physical cash, M1 adds checking accounts, M2 includes savings accounts and money market funds. The broader the measure, the more money-like assets it includes. Policymakers track these to understand economic conditions. Rapid growth in money supply can signal inflation risk, while contraction can indicate recession. For everyday people, this matters because it affects interest rates, job availability, and investment returns. Money supply is not abstract, it shapes your cost of living and your financial opportunities. Let's connect this to government spending and taxation. Governments do not fund spending the same way households do. They can borrow by issuing bonds, which central banks and investors buy. In some cases, central banks indirectly finance government spending through bond purchases, effectively creating new money. Taxes, on the other hand, help regulate inflation and redistribute resources. Taxes also create demand for money because people must earn the currency to pay them. This relationship between money creation, government spending, and taxation is complex and often politicized. The key takeaway is that governments influence money supply, but they are constrained by inflation, investor confidence, and legal frameworks. Now let's address common myths. One major myth is that printing money automatically makes everyone richer. It doesn't. If money creation outpaces real economic production, purchasing power falls. Another myth is that banks lend out your deposits directly. In reality, lending creates deposits. A third myth is that central banks control everything perfectly. They don't. Monetary policy works with delays and uncertainty. Mistakes happen. Understanding these myths helps you avoid simplistic explanations you often hear online and allows you to think critically about financial news and policy debates. Money creation also has ethical and psychological dimensions. Access to credit determines who can create money indirectly. Wealthier individuals and corporations often borrow at lower rates, benefiting more from money creation. This can widen inequality. Psychologically, easy money can encourage excessive risk-taking, leading to bubbles. When bubbles burst, the consequences disproportionately affect ordinary workers. Regulators try to manage these risks through stress tests, lending standards, and consumer protection laws. Ethics enters the picture when deciding who gets access to credit and under what conditions. These are not purely technical decisions, they reflect societal values. Let's tie this to your income. Your salary ultimately depends on how much money circulates in the economy and how productive that economy is. During expansions, credit flows freely, businesses invest, and wages rise. During contractions, money creation slows, layoffs increase, and wage growth stalls. Understanding this helps you plan your career and income strategy. For example, industries tied to credit like real estate and finance are highly sensitive to interest rates. Knowing where you work in the economic cycle can help you manage risk and build resilience. Investing is directly connected to money creation. When central banks lower rates, asset prices often rise because investors search for higher returns. Stocks, real estate, and even cryptocurrencies can benefit from loose monetary policy. Conversely, rising rates often compress valuations. Long-term investors must understand this relationship to avoid emotional decisions. Money creation does not guarantee investment success, but it shapes the environment in which investments perform. This is why macroeconomic awareness is a powerful tool, even for beginners. Retirement planning is also affected. Inflation erodes fixed income over time, which is why relying solely on cash savings is risky. Pension systems, retirement accounts, and Social Security are all influenced by monetary policy and government regulation. Low interest rates can challenge retirees who depend on conservative investments. Understanding how money is regulated helps you choose appropriate strategies for different life stages. Beginners focus on stability, intermediates on growth, and advanced planners on preservation and tax efficiency. Risk is inseparable from money creation. Credit expansion increases leverage in the system. Leverage magnifies gains and losses. Financial crises often follow periods of excessive credit growth. Regulation aims to limit systemic risk, but it cannot eliminate it. As an individual, your job is not to predict policy perfectly, but to diversify, manage debt responsibly, and avoid overexposure to any single economic outcome. Knowledge of money creation helps you respect risk rather than fear it. Now let's talk about who should actively engage with this system. Anyone earning, saving, investing, or borrowing uses it, whether they realize it or not. Who should be cautious? Those who overuse debt without understanding interest and risk. Avoiding money entirely is not an option, but blind participation is dangerous. Education is the middle path. When you understand the rules, you can use money as a tool rather than becoming its victim. Legal frameworks underpin everything. Banking laws, capital requirements, consumer protection rules, and central bank independence all exist to maintain trust. When these frameworks weaken, financial instability increases. Different countries regulate money differently, which is why currency stability varies globally. This is also why some people diversify across currencies or assets. Regulation is not perfect, but without it, modern economies could not function at scale. Digital money and cashless systems are the next evolution. While cryptocurrencies are often discussed separately, they force important conversations about trust, decentralization, and control. Central bank digital currencies aim to modernize money while retaining regulatory oversight. These developments do not eliminate traditional money creation, but they may change how directly central banks interact with the public. Understanding fundamentals prepares you to evaluate these innovations rationally rather than emotionally. A beginner's mistake is focusing only on earning more money without understanding its value over time. An intermediate mistake is overconfidence, thinking you can outsmart policy. An advanced mistake is ignoring political and regulatory risk. Money creation is influenced by human decisions, incentives, and limitations. Humility and adaptability are essential at every level. Actionable takeaway number 1. Track inflation, not just interest rates. Inflation determines real returns. Number 2. Respect debt. Debt creates money, but it also creates obligation. Number 3. Diversify across assets that respond differently to monetary conditions. These principles apply regardless of income level. Another practical habit is reading central bank statements occasionally, not for predictions, but for direction. Over time, you'll recognize patterns in language. This builds financial intuition. You don't need to be an economist to benefit from awareness. Money creation also explains why financial education matters so much. Schools often teach budgeting, but not systems. Understanding systems empowers better decisions. You stop blaming yourself for macro forces while still taking responsibility for personal choices. Psychologically, money feels scarce because attention focuses on immediate needs. Systems thinking expands your horizon. You see cycles instead of crises, trends instead of panic. This mental shift alone can improve financial outcomes. Ethically, societies debate how much inequality is acceptable and how money creation should be directed. These debates shape policy. Staying informed allows you to participate meaningfully rather than react emotionally. If you remember one thing, remember this. Money is created through trust, debt, and regulation. Break any one of those and the system destabilizes. Protect all three and economies grow. This knowledge does not replace hard work or discipline, but it multiplies their effectiveness. You stop swimming against the current and start navigating with it. As your income grows, your exposure to monetary forces increases. Awareness scales with responsibility. This is why financial literacy compounds over time. The goal is not to fear money creation, but to understand it. Fear leads to paralysis. Understanding leads to strategy. Money is not evil, magical, or neutral. It is contextual. How it is created and regulated determines outcomes. You cannot control the system, but you can understand it. When you understand how money is created and regulated, finance stops being intimidating and starts becoming logical. You see why policies change, why markets react, and how your personal finances fit into the bigger picture. That understanding is the foundation of long-term wealth, resilience, and confidence, and that's exactly why mastering this topic changes everything.